Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode, I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is singer, songwriter, and producer Alexander 23. So Alexander's path to this point has been anything but a straight line. At one point, he was studying mechanical engineering at university before he quit to pursue music full-time with the band The Heydays, which had a deal with Island Records. When they split, he decided to focus on songwriting and producing, but when he found that unfulfilling, he returned to playing music and building his solo career. It's all worked out pretty well. Not only is his solo career flying off the back of songs like I Don't Know You Yet and his debut album Aftershock, but he was also nominated for a Grammy for co-producing Olivia Rodrigo's smash hit single Good For You, all of which we talk about in this interview. I caught up with Alex when he was in Sydney a few months ago supporting AJR. Those shows came off the back of a run of dates with his idol John Mayer, which is where we started the conversation. What did you witness of John every night? Did you have the opportunity just to, because I know you're a big fan, just to observe and pick up certain things from him?
Yeah. I mean, it was a masterclass every night. Like me and my band, we did not miss a second of their show any night. We saw all 2 or 2.5 hours every single night. Obviously, John is like the biggest inspiration to me and someone I'm very, very extremely fortunate to call a friend at this point. But his band is like, it's an all-star band. I mean, you got like Greg Fillinganes, you got Pino Palladino, Aaron Sterling was playing the drums for a lot of it. Isaiah Sharkey, Dave Reinhardt. I mean, like I could go on. These dudes are just like such pros and they do the hardest things with such ease. And John is a great example of that. The things he does on the guitar while he's singing would take most people a lifetime to like master.
Right.
You know?
What was it like turning, because I saw you did Everybody Wants to Rule the World with John. What was it like turning around on stage and seeing someone who you've really followed since being a teen, seeing him up there playing next to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was the craziest feeling of all time. And it was incredible to get to know John on a personal level, but then to get to know him on a musical level in that capacity was something I think I'll cherish forever. I think the show itself was amazing, getting to perform with him on stage at TD Garden, an arena in Boston was insane. But I think the most special part of the experience for me was soundcheck, because we got to kind of just hang and jam and just like be, 2 guys with 2 guitars on stage.
Yeah. Do you ask for advice in those situations, or or is it more just a peer-to-peer kind of?
Yeah, I mean, that situation was more like peer-to-peer. It was just kind of feeling each other out, how can we serve the song in the best way? I think we both have a similar approach to music at large, but especially live music, of just trying to serve the song and make things as fun as possible. But in kind of more like private life, he's become an unbelievable resource for me, both professionally and personally, just to bounce things off of, because I feel like so much of my life so far I've had this constant thought of like, what would John think about this?
Right.
And now to be able to get that answer immediately is just crazy.
Yeah. Have you had mentors along the way that you have been able to lean on or to have helped you?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of my mentors, honestly, though, have been kind of like outside of music. I've definitely had people along the way musically who have helped me a bunch and stuff, but I think I've been mentored for the most part more on like a philosophical level of just like how to work hard and how to push yourself from people outside of music.
Yeah, okay. One of the things that I think I'd read that you really admired John for when you were growing up was his lyric writing. And, lyrics are so important to your music that you really focus in on the minutiae. You think about a song like Crash and you've got that great line in there about changing the ex's name from baby to no drunk call.
I'm glad you like that one. I love that one.
What headspace do you need to be in to write any of your lyrics? Because you do really try and get down to the nitty gritty of what you are feeling and really dredge that up.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I'm very glad you feel that way. I'm not really someone who can write about stuff as I'm feeling it. It's certainly more like looking back and having almost like a bird's eye view over my feelings really helps me. And I just kind of always push myself to go like one layer deeper is kind of how I think of it. Like, okay, like I don't want to call this person when I'm drunk. Like, how can I say that in a way that's both true and interesting?
And that ability to go that layer deeper. And, I think I've seen you talk about the fact that the more you did that, the more you realized that people related to your lyrics, which in some ways almost feels like a bit of a blood sport.
Yeah.
It's like the more you pour out onto the page, the more people are going to relate to it.
Totally.
How comfortable were you with that? Or did it take you a while to get comfortable with being so open?
Yeah, I think I'm still getting comfortable. I think it's definitely a learning process, and something that I think on every project I've gotten a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And it's kind of a tough balance because you start to get into territory where you're sharing more than just your own. Can I swear on this?
Yes, you can.
Sharing just more than your own shit.
Right.
And that starts to be a bit more of a balance and a give and take and a trade-off, and something, you know, like I've gotten pretty comfortable telling the world how I feel, but there's certain things where it's certain experiences with other people where I'm still kind of navigating, like how much is it okay to share their side of it, or my perceived their side of it.
And how do you navigate that?
I mean, man, I'll let you know how I feel about this album in a year, you know? Like there's certain lines on this album that still kind of make me a little bit uncomfortable, and I think that's a really, really good thing. I'm a firm believer, and you can't, you know, find the boundaries unless you push past them.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think I'm just inching either towards it or away from it at all moments.
Yeah. What's an example on Aftershock of a lyric which you are still like squinting through?
Well, I think there's one in particular that I think has been interpreted maybe like differently than I intended. There's a line in the song "Hate Me If It Helps," like, "I'm sorry I paid for your SSRIs. For making you happy, I apologize." I'm obviously not sorry, you know, like if you take that as truth, like I am not sorry at all. I left that certain relationship feeling extremely, you know, proud of the way I handled myself and proud of the relationship, even though it didn't work out. It was more meant to demonstrate like this like raw anger and frustration, and was more, you know, even though it was literal, like felt more symbolic than it was literal.
How do you navigate the urge to self-censor?
I just think like I just remind myself like why am I doing this then? You know, like who am I doing this for? You know, so if I'm doing it for me, which I think is the way all music should be written, it should be, at least in my opinion, should be a very selfish process.
Yeah. Then
what am I? You know, who am I helping by censoring myself?
Yeah. Are there other lyricists that you've always admired who have, I guess, paved the way for that kind of lyric writing?
Yeah. Well, I think John is a good example, in especially what I'm trying to accomplish too, because something I think about John's lyrics that I've always respected is like any line feels like it could have been the title. Like he'll have a line in like the back half of the bridge that could have been a whole song.
Right.
And he just sneaks it in there, and it's just so beautiful the way he weaves that in. But also like there's so much other stuff musically and harmonically going on in the song, but it never seems to step on each other. So that's always been a goal of mine, is like, how can I demonstrate my like love of guitar and my love of lyricism and have them work together rather than working away from each other. But other lyricists that I really admire, I mean, like, I don't even know where to start. Paul Simon, like,
right.
We could just go anywhere with this. Casey Musgraves, I think, is an example of someone who's more of a contemporary that I'm just in awe of.
Yeah.
I just cannot believe the way, it's just like, it's so funny. Like, it's kind of like with the painters too. Like, we all have the same colors, and some people are better at painting. Right. And she's better at painting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Is there a favorite lyric or song of hers that you have? Not
Merry-Go-Round, as far as like the old stuff goes, I just think that's just brilliant. Like, I just can't even imagine that. Like, there's songs where I hear where lyrically I'm like, this is so good. Like, I wish I could have gotten here. You know, I think I could have gotten here. Like, when I listen to Dreaming with a Broken Heart, I'm like, I know I would have written this song.
Right.
If you would have given me like a few more years, like I could have gotten here. Merry-Go-Round, just through a combination of prowess and life experience, I just could never have written that song, and I'm just so in awe of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything she does, Slow Burn, we go on for days. That's like a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Lyrically, you know, being so open, and the fact particularly on Aftershock, and the fact that I guess it's a quote unquote breakup album, sort of tracking the various stages of going through a breakup. When you approach an album like that, does it inspire musically how it's going to sound?
I think music from a more like instrumentation and production perspective, I think was listening to so much of the music that I was actually just talking to someone about this. Like, since I started making music professionally, it has profoundly changed the way I listen to music in I think, net negative way. Like, I don't like listening to music as much as I did before, which is a crazy thing to say because it's all I do all the time.
Why is that?
I just know I've seen under the hood. I know too much, you know. It's hard for me to like not passively, but just like enjoy it for what it is as one product rather than like hearing all the individual pieces. But when I listen to music that I listened to growing up, I still get that same feeling. So I've found myself going back to and listening to a lot of John Mayer, a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers and Weezer, and just having that same just like blissful feeling of like, this is just music to me. I'm not overanalyzing it. And I think that this album, you know, instrumentation wise and musically and production wise, is kind of a synthesis of everything I grew up listening to.
When do you think you lost that that desire to, because you'd seen too much under the hood?
I mean, I still love music. Don't get me wrong. Like, it takes something from like the most enjoyable thing ever in the history of the world to just the most enjoyable thing ever. Right. You know, like I still absolutely love music and listening to music, and I love making music more than ever. You know, so I guess that's the trade-off. But yeah, I think it's kind of like a balance that I'm continuing to strike a balance of.
Yeah, I always think that's an interesting transition for an artist who is starting out and obviously has other things which they need to do to make a living, but they get to the point where they're now making a living from their music, and it's a job.
Yeah, it's a job.
You have to go on tour, you have to go to the studio, you have to click on and click off like you would any other normal job. When did that happen to you, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, first of all, still happening. I'm still kind of finding the balance. I actually I forgot what artist, but like I saw like a TikTok of him kind of saying like, someone had like posted this thing like, this person was so mean to me after the show, like I waited like 4 hours for the show, and then like they just like went to their bus and didn't say hi after. And he was just like, look, I wish I could like say hello to everyone, I wish I could, but like I'm playing 5 shows a week, I'm doing like 2 hours of press a day, I'm losing my voice, I'm getting sick on the road, like there's some times where I just have to go to the bus and like go to bed like immediately, and I'm really sorry, I wish I could meet everyone. And it really kind of struck home with me because I'm so like, I'm still at the point in my career where I feel like everything could disappear tomorrow. Like I could wake up and it could all be a sham, and I could be just like back in my childhood bed. Like that like has not gone away yet, nor I don't think it will ever go away, at least for me. And so I want to, like, I'm so unbelievably authentically appreciative of everyone. Like the fact that I'm even here right now, like I grew up in Deerfield, Illinois, like outside Chicago, like I'm in Australia talking to you about my album. Like that to me is insane. And so I want to talk to everyone and meet everyone and give everyone a hug and take as many pictures as they want and all this stuff. But I'm starting to be confronted by the reality of like, it's not sustainable to like be 100% of the time.
Yeah. And have you had, I mean, you know, talking about John earlier and talking to him about, was these the kind of things that you talk to your peers about?
Yeah, for sure. And he, once again, has been a great resource on kind of how to navigate that. And he's honest with me about like things he, you know, wishes he could change or advice to give to me. And it's nice to have someone who has done it in such a, you know, profound and big way. Yeah.
One of the songs on the record, Hate Me If It Helps, I love it's got this really dissonant part a couple of times throughout the song. I guess it's sort of tail ending the chorusy kind of. I'm not sure if that's where you would put it, but what inspired that? Because I think it really jumps out and harks back to some of those artists that you mentioned earlier in terms of the stuff that you really still enjoy listening to from your youth, I guess.
Yeah, I like that you chose that part. I'm assuming you're talking about like maybe the post-chorus, like where it's like down and then it just like
correct.
Yeah. That to me is like an exact microcosm of like what I think Aftershock is, where it's like you have like this kind of more stripped folky part and the more like rocky part. And at least in that song, like I don't know if it was like maybe intentional. It's funny because like when you get asked questions about the album, I feel like I start to make up stories, you know, whereas like in the studio I was probably just like, this sounds fucking awesome, like that's what it is. There's no, but now I'm kind of like reverse engineering this meaning, and at least to me looking back, maybe consciously maybe subconsciously, it's like that song to me is like the duality between feeling like I still care about this person, we're not together, but I do want her to feel better. And I so badly want her to feel better that I don't care if she hates me. While simultaneously being like, how could she hate me? I put so much into this. Like I tried so hard. I did everything I could possibly do, and kind of balancing those two things. So the post-chorus to me is like very much so like the first half is like, whatever you need. Like, I want you to just get over me. And the second half is like, how dare you hate me, you know?
Nice. One of the songs on the record that isn't about a breakup is The Hardest Part, which is a beautiful song and a very emotional song. And, you know, some of the lines in there, one of the lines in particular which stood out, it's about a loss of a friend. And it's I cried when I read the last text that you sent because I'll never see those 3 dots there again, which is such a relatable sentiment. What was it like putting those words on the page?
Yeah, not fun. I think even writing music about heartbreak is fun. you're still making music, and I'm not writing music while I'm necessarily like in the peak of the heartbreak, so I can more so kind of just relax and have fun and let it come to me. That one was definitely not fun to write. I'm glad you chose that lyric, because I love that one, because to me that was like, not only am I not going to get like a text from you, like there's something so alive about seeing those like 3 dots pop up that make you feel like the person is so like present. And it's really weird. Like, I don't know. I guess I've been fortunate in a way to not have lost that many of like my peers growing up. And now in my 20s, it's starting to happen in a way that's just so heartbreaking. Like, there's no way around it. And I think that's why, like, when I first wrote the song, I didn't want to put it out, because I was like, usually my songs kind of come, at least for me, like to some kind of emotional conclusion of like, this is how I feel, this is why I feel this way, and this is what I'm going to do about it. And that song is much more just like a, wow, this really hurts kind of song. But I'm happy I put it out, because like the amount, like, I don't know, like it's really cool to see a lot of people streaming your music. It's really cool to see people at shows, but like the amount of just messages I got about that song of being like, hey, this happened to me, and this really, really helped. Like, nothing will ever feel better than that, I don't think.
Did you play that to your friend's parents or your friend's family?
Yeah, so I sent it to them before it came out, just to make sure they were okay with it. And they've been unbelievably supportive,
Right.
which I'm unbelievably grateful for, because I would not have felt comfortable putting it out without their support. And we've been working together on some, kind of more like charitable activations around the song and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll never like make $1 off that song, and I'm very happy about that, because it feels weird to kind of like make money off of other people's grief.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that this Aftershock is your debut album, given that you've prior to this released a couple of EPs, a number of singles, is an album still really important to you as an artist? And did that put a pressure on you to think that, right, I'm an album artist, this is a grand statement?
Yeah, I think not really pressure. It was honestly a lot more liberating, and that like, I put out 2 EPs first, but they more so felt like a collection of singles. It was like a place to put all these songs that I had written kind of in a disconnected, disconjointed way. And then when I realized I was ready for an album, I was like, wow, now I can write songs like Fall 2017 and write songs like Magic Wand, and I have a place to like put them. And I don't need to like, put it's more, I feel more pressure where I'm like, okay, what's the next single? Like, that's a hard place to be in. That's like an impossible task, like having an album, having the time and the space to really like experiment and like put different things in different places and let them live there and change my mind a million times was really nice.
And how do you hear that in the record? Are there songs in particular which you think, I would never have had the opportunity to do this?
Yeah. I mean, like Magic Wand, Fall 2017, those two come to mind, because those just like would not have been like conventional, I'm doing air quotes for anyone listening, singles. But those are 2 of my favorite songs on the record, and I'm so grateful that they exist, and they were so much fun to make.
Yeah, nice one. We were talking earlier about touring and the live work that you've done. Is it true that you played your first show when you were 9? You actually...
Yeah.
You formed a band, and that's when you started playing?
I just kind of got lucky. Like, my friends, when I was like in elementary school, also liked music, and one of them was a drum player, and one of them played the keys, and one of them played the bass, and I played guitar, and it kind of just worked out. And we played at I believe my 5th grade lunch was my first show ever. And we were obviously not good, but we were good for what it was. And I just remember thinking like, wow, this was fun. Like, I could do this. I could keep doing this.
Yeah. What did you play?
What did we play? We were doing like Ramones covers.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'll show you some videos after this. Like, we were doing Wild Thing. We were doing a bunch of stuff. I mean, like, we just all listened to like the music that our dads like listened to, So like, I mean, we weren't good enough to do Zeppelin yet at that point, but like, we were just, you can hack through a Ramones song.
Sure. Did you notice that your peers, your school friends looked at you differently after that?
Kind of, but like, you're 9, like,
of course,
like you're just like going through it. Like, every day is just a new adventure, but it was fun. I just remember just like being like, this is awesome. Like, I gotta do more of this.
Yeah. And this is while you're growing up in Deerfield, which is about 20 minutes out of Chicago. Is that right, in Illinois?
Yeah.
What is that like to grow up there? What kind of place is that?
It's kind of just like, the best way I can describe it is like, it's like a coming of age movie. It's like a lot of those movies were filmed like around my area, like Ferris Bueller, The Breakfast Club,
right?
Stuff like that. So it's literally like movie high school.
Okay. Like, what do you mean? Like, you've got the different cliques,
yeah,
and
you
all
got the
that
jocks
kind of stuff,
and the theater kid. I mean, it's not as obviously dramatic and
Sure.
stuff, but like, yeah, you got the theater kids, you got like the athletes, you got the more just like skater kids. Like, it's really like that. Like, the football players wear their uniforms on Fridays. You know, the cheerleaders wear their uniforms on Fridays. Like,
Yeah.
it was literally like that. I mean, I had a great time. I was lucky enough to. I feel like your childhood is really just kind of like your friends and family. It's kind of like, obviously, I mean, I'm not really reinventing anything here, but
Sure.
those are the two most important things no matter where you grow up. And I was very lucky to have some good friends and some good family.
Yeah. Were you a good kid?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was a good kid.
Got good school reports and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I like school a lot. School is
Okay.
never, like, I feel like so many musicians were like, school's never for me, fuck school, all this shit. Like, I really enjoyed school,
Okay.
Right.
And then you mentioned that some of the songs you were playing, the 9-year-olds were playing, were songs that your parents had played around.
Yeah.
So there was music in your house growing up?
Oh yeah, so much. Yeah. My mom loves music. My dad's actually in a band now,
Right.
which is awesome. And he's the reason I started playing guitar, because he played a little guitar and I saw him doing that. And I was like, well, I got to try that.
Yeah.
That looks awesome. And yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to everything. Honestly, like, I was listening to mostly progressive rock. Like, that was kind of my thing. I was like listening to Genesis, Supertramp, Kansas, like Pink Floyd, all those bands. I was just like obsessed with how just like beautiful and detailed it was. And like the storytelling through instruments was always something I was drawn to as well.
Yeah. Because I think last time we spoke, I think you mentioned that you saw a lot of Pink Floyd tribute shows.
Oh yeah, I saw Australian Pink Floyd at least 3 times.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of Pink Floyd. I saw Roger Waters do The Wall. I've never seen David Gilmour perform.
Okay.
Which is a shame, because he's on my Mount Rushmore of guitar players. He's
Right.
someone who I'm like, you could play me 100 people playing the same lick, and I could tell you which one is David Gilmour.
Really?
Yeah.
So he was really pivotal to you when you were learning?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So were these because when you're learning, as you mentioned, the Ramones, you tend to, AC/DC is a band that you might pick up as a learner guitarist, because it's reasonably simple in terms of chord structure, but you're listening to progressive rock.
Yeah.
Is that where you were sort of taking your inspiration from and trying to mimic these guitar parts?
I mean, for sure. And I think, well, I'll give one caveat. I think like I was trying to get more and more, like be more and more of a shredder and more of just like doing intricate stuff until I turned about like maybe 14, 15 is where it switched. And I was like, I just want to write songs.
Okay.
Like, all this is really cool, but like I want to be able to sit by myself and like really do this. And I still obviously was practicing guitar, but it was kind of more to serve the song. And I think that's when I really fell in love with John, because he had all the guitar chops. I mean, he's got all the guitar chops.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I got some of the guitar chops. He's got all of them. But he puts the song first. And that's kind of been my motto ever since, is like, put the song first.
Right. Were your parents involved in entertainment or music in any way? What did they do?
No, not at all. My dad is a bankruptcy attorney. My mom was a teacher, and now she has like a custom apparel business.
Right.
But they both love music.
Yeah.
Like there was always music on in my house. It was a very musical family. And my brother and sister, like, they don't do it professionally, but they can play instruments and sing and do all that stuff too.
Okay. And is it true that they took you to NSYNC when you were 5?
Yeah,
That
when I was
the first
5.
show?
Yeah, it was my first show. I fell asleep.
When you were 5, what are you
I
going to do?
was 5. Yeah, I'm sure it was a great show, but I was tired and it was probably late. It was probably
Right.
past my bedtime.
But they encouraged it.
Yeah, I mean, I went to so many concerts growing up, like obviously with my parents at first, and then after that they, would let me go to see shows by myself or with friends, because
Yeah.
they knew how much I loved it.
Who are you going to see? You remember like the first show that really just blew
First
you
show-
away?
Oh man, I saw, me and my friend went downtown by ourselves when we were like probably like 14 or 15, and we saw Ben Folds.
Right.
Who I'm a massive Ben Folds fan. That's another guy with some crazy chops and just his own style, and the lyrics are crazy and he's quirky. And the band was ripping. It was one of my favorite venues in Chicago. So yeah, love Ben Folds. Ben Folds is interesting because he was a drummer first, and
Right.
which makes sense once you listen to the way he plays the piano.
Yeah.
And I never really clicked with me. I was always like, how does he play? Why does he play like that? And then I like learned, oh, he's a drummer first. This makes perfect sense.
Right. And what about when you actually started seeking out your own music and buying records or downloading? What was the first? Do you remember the first record?
I remember
that
the
you
first
bought
CD I ever
with your
bought.
own money?
Yeah, was Get Rich or Die Trying.
Really?
Ironically enough. Yeah, but I think, and that was honestly, looking back, I think when I first started to really like perceive production you know, and be like, oh, like there's like the song and then there's like the production. You hear the beats on that album, you're like, this is masterful. Like this is like just the way these sounds blend together is so like rich.
Right. And so do you think that's what piqued your interest in production?
Yeah, I think looking back, that was like the first time I ever really even like noticed the production, because it's honestly more apparent in hip hop too, I think. Whereas like rock stuff for me, I always like intrinsically understood it. Like it made more sense to me as a guitar player. I was like, oh, this is like a guy in his guitar and he does this thing and then the drummer does that. And by then I was kind of playing piano and bass and drums, so I understood it more. But then you start hearing like the beats on Get Rich or Die Trying, you're like, oh, this is different, you know?
Yeah.
I can't just like sit down with my guitar and make this.
We'll be back with more from Alexander after this break. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Alexander, 23. And so in terms of when you started focusing more on songwriting at 14, why do you think that was?
I think it's when you first start having like original thoughts and you know, at least like looking back, like I feel like that's when I started actually perceiving the world in a way that like was outside of just myself, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you're in 5th grade, like what's for lunch? You know, like what's for lunch? When can I go play basketball with my friends? Why am I in, you know, history class right now? I don't care about history. I care about like right now.
Right.
And then I think you get to like 13, 14, 15, you start to be like, oh, there's other people with other thoughts about other things. Like, that's interesting. And I think I was never really, another reason, and this is still true to this day, is like I don't think I'm excellent at explaining my feelings about things in real time all the time. At least personal stuff. Like I have a lot of thoughts about the world and I could talk your ear off about like just random shit. But when it comes to like my own stuff, like I feel much more comfortable like kind of retreating and really giving it like thought and then presenting it. And I think songs gave me that outlet.
Right. So it was almost a bit of solace, I guess, in the teen years where you were trying to process where you sit in the world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right.
And it was just I had so much success doing it so quickly. And I don't mean that by like people loved it so much right away, but I just like, I loved it, you know, right away. And I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful place to put stuff. And it's like intellectually stimulating too. You know, I can try and come up with cool guitar parts and match them with cool lyrics and do all this stuff, you know?
And I've seen you talk about the fact that, you know, you would do shows in pizza places and I guess anywhere that you could.
Wherever. Like growing up in high school, I can't even tell you the amount of like charity events I played. I played every pizza place in town, sandwich places. I would drive like hours to battle the bands. Like any place where I could play music and people would have to listen. I was there with a smile on my face. I would play at bars by myself. My parents had to come. I once did like a 3-hour show at a bar.
Really?
Which I was not qualified to do. You know, like I knew like, you know, 15, 20 songs. Like, let me tell you, that doesn't get you through 3 hours. So I'm just like running, you know, luckily there's turnover in a bar. So you're just running the same songs over and over again.
Sure. What did you learn there? That seemed really, really foundational in terms of learning how to command an audience.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was command. I mean, like I kind of learned that like being good at music is not enough. Like that's a piece of the puzzle, you know?
Yeah.
It's obviously a very important piece, but it's not going to get you all the way there. And you know, I still find myself sometimes in situations where I'm battling for attention. Obviously, online, you're always battling for attention, but like in person too, you know, like you never know what the crowd's going to be like. And the spectrum of gigs that I still play to this day is so large. So it's like how to really reel people in and keep them there.
Is there a secret? Is there the secret?
I think for me, I don't know, like the trick is kind of thinking of it a set as less like a set list and more of a collection of moments. So it's like hitting people with moments at the right time, whether that's like a sing-along part or a super intimate part or a more like big full part, and just like really kind of like making it more of a journey rather than just like focusing on which songs go where.
Yeah, got you. And you mentioned the importance of that Ben Folds show. Were there other artists that you saw that I guess almost taught you how to perform?
Oh, great question. Red Hot Chili Peppers, for sure. I mean, those dudes are just maniacs.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about keeping people's attention. Like, I dare you to look away at a Red Hot Chili Peppers show.
Right.
And then just like bands, like I was just like, I was just always like looking for new bands. Like I remember like I saw Atlas Genius open up for Imagine Dragons in Chicago.
Yeah.
And just like seeing, I don't know, guy with the guitar, guy with drums, like them versus us, who's gonna like it, you know, like who, you know, like it's just inspiring to like see people just go out there and just like battle for attention, you know.
Yeah, nice. I think it's really interesting that, you know, you pursued this so wholeheartedly during school, but you obviously, and you mentioned earlier that you liked school, and you obviously still stuck with your studies because you ended up going to the University of Pennsylvania to do mechanical engineering. What was the goal?
Well, I actually remember high school ending, and I was talking to my parents, and they were like, you know, if you want to do music and like live at home for a year, like, you know, you can do that. And I was just like, I obviously want to do music as a career. Like, who the fuck wouldn't want to like be a musician? But I don't like see a way out. Like, no, like there wasn't like a path, you know?
Right.
And so I was like, let me just go to, you know, school. Maybe I'll figure something out there. Maybe I won't. I mean, like there's a version of me that is very happy, like working, you know, in mechanical engineering, whatever path that would have let me down, you know, like I really enjoyed it, but then ended up going to school and ironically met some dudes, started a band and dropped out a year later. So,
yeah. Was that the catalyst, meeting those other guys?
Yeah. And they like, you know, they were from the East Coast, they were from New York, like knew some people in the music industry, all this stuff. And they like, that was the first time it really, really felt possible. Like this could be more than a hobby. You know, like I was at school making beats in my like dorm room and writing songs and stuff, but like I didn't really have a place to put them necessarily. Yeah. And I feel like the timing was like, the internet wasn't as like rich yet with the like opportunity, you know, like you put stuff on there and like, you know, maybe some person who's like someone's assistant somewhere over there would be like, hey, you might be good someday, but you suck now, you know, like, but you know, now it's like, you know, your life could change overnight. Like it didn't feel as much like that then. Yeah. And meeting these dudes was like the first time. And like, there's a nice kind of like, I don't know, I think it ended up kind of killing the band was like the diffusion of responsibility, but like the collective excitement, I think is the other edge of that sword. Right. Really kind of helped us all kind of really jump in and pursue that.
Yeah. And that was at the heydays? Yeah. So do you remember that moment that you dropped out? And
yeah, I remember sending the email. I vividly remember sending the email to Penn, being like, this is my official leave of absence, because my parents didn't want me to drop out, obviously. Right. They were like, yeah, just do a leave of absence. You know, you'll go back if it doesn't work out. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go back. Yeah, for sure. And I remember sending it and being like, it's that easy? Like, they're not going to beg me to stay? You know, I was like, you guys, like, because I feel like as a kid, you know, like, I was like, I guess 19 years old. As a kid, whenever you do something kind of like questionable, you're always looking for like a little pushback, you know? And usually it comes from your parents. At least my parents, like every time I did some stupid stuff, like they would like let me know, you know? Yeah. And there was it was just like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're good. Let us know, you know, when in the 2 years you want to come back. Yeah. And I was like, wow, you know, like it's like, be careful what you wish for. But I was obviously very, very happy and very excited. And we had some tours lined up. So it was like, you know, busy for that first year, which was nice.
And is that when you moved to New York with that band?
That's when I moved to New York. Yeah,
right. So what are those two? Was that your first experience of proper touring?
Yeah, that was we went on tour with Jesse McCartney.
Really?
That was my first tour ever. I was the drummer in the band. Yeah. And I famously forgot my drums for the first show, which was great. I didn't have a drum set yet because, I mean, I played drums, but I wasn't like a experienced touring drummer. I didn't have my own drum set. I was just a college kid. So I bought this like terribly shitty set off Craigslist, put it in my basement in Philadelphia, and that's what I practiced on. But it wasn't like it was like a practice set. I couldn't bring it on a tour, so I had to rent a set. I rented it. It was at my it was at my guitar player's mom's house in New Jersey. We were loading the van. We're all so excited, loading the van. We get to the first show in Washington, D.C. We unload everything. It's like, oh, where are the drums, dude? So I went to the nearest music store, had to buy, you know, drum set, cymbals. It's not cheap, especially when you're a broke college dropout.
That's it.
But the show was great. So it all worked out. And obviously I returned it, got the other drum set, made it all work.
Right. Yeah. And is this all in a van? Like, is this also your first
This is in a van, yeah. Yeah, I've just graduated to like being in a bus. And let me tell you, as someone who has toured in a van and a Sprinter for many years now, it is something I really, really, really appreciate. It is a much different lifestyle. Touring in a van is like, I don't know, it's so funny because like when people hear you're on tour, they're like, oh, you're on tour, it's amazing. And I'm like, you don't understand. There's nothing less glamorous in the world than being an opening band in a van tour trying to follow a bus. It is impossible. It's like if you enjoy sleeping 2 hours a night max, like, yeah, you'll have a good time.
Yeah. What did you learn about just even surviving that?
Sleep when you can, eat when you can, and shower when you can. I think are the three biggest ones. Don't pass up an opportunity for any of those three things is the biggest thing.
Okay.
But I was also like 19, like nothing mattered.
Yeah.
Now I'm very fortunate, but I have things in my life that matter. Like I didn't care. All I cared about was like playing shows with my friends.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, that's still all I really care about. But like, it was much more concrete than like, this is what I care about. This is what I'm doing. I don't care what has to happen to make it happen.
Yeah, nice. And is it through some of the recordings that you did with the Heydays that you got to, I guess, experience other producers and ask them questions?
Yeah.
Is that really what sort of...
That's exactly how I learned how to produce was I was just the kind of annoying 19-year-old in every session being like, ooh, what plugin is that? Like, oh, what does this do? Oh, why'd you do that? Oh, like, how do you have the compressor set for this vocal?
Yeah.
Just relentlessly asking. I mean, and we were signed to a label. So, like, we had the opportunity to work with some amazing producers. And I was just a kid. I didn't know better than to just be that annoying. And so I was that annoying. And I'm grateful I was because, like, it's really, really how I learned. And, like, I can't imagine really going to school for production. It so much so feels like you got to do it to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think of the band as like my college education for like how to be a producer and an artist.
Yeah. You strike me as someone who's very naturally curious, and that's an example of that.
Yeah.
Is that something you've always had?
Yeah, to a fault, I think sometimes. Like I'll go down rabbit holes that I have no business doing. Like I bought an embroidery machine. I'm like
what for?
Because I just like making I don't like another reason why I learned how to produce is like I don't like things in my way of like learning how to, like I'd rather do 10 times as much work and have all the control and be able to just like do it and not rely on other people. And I like designing clothes, I like designing merch, and I was like, well, I don't want to have to deal with anyone else. I want to like have an idea and then make it. So I got the machine, I started learning, and I just keep doing that with more and more stuff, like it's just how it, like I have to like stop myself sometimes from like going too deep down stuff. Like I'll like watch a magic video on YouTube and I'll be like, oh, I want to be a magician. And then I'll have to be like, you chill out for a second. Like you can't just be a magician. Like this is going to take years of practice. Like, is this really how you want to spend your time? So I'm getting better at kind of halting myself because it's definitely a blessing and a curse. I think it's led me to some of the most, profound and beautiful experience of my life, but it also has led me to wasting months and months on something that makes no sense. So
I really want to see some magic tricks in your show.
That would be fun. Well, I've actually always had this kind of fantasy of like doing an acoustic show where like every song is paired with like a different like elementary school experiment. Because they're so quick, like the classic volcano experiment of like kind of in between like each section adding like a little vial or something, and then the last chorus I add the last thing and it does the volcano thing. So like I think it'd be fun to kind of do like a strange like middle school assembly type show at some point.
Nice.
But yeah, my manager often has to like walk me back from these ideas, which I appreciate. It's a nice yin and yang.
Nice. So you're 19, you're playing in this band, you've got a deal, you're working with these producers. Obviously the band ends at some point.
Yeah. How
did you deal with that? Because part of you must be thinking, we're on our way, I've made the right decision, here we go. And then that gets taken away. Yeah,
I think it was equal parts kind of devastating and exciting. The band for me was an amazing experience, but I knew that it was not like what I wanted to do with my life. So I was really excited to explore new territories. I didn't yet kind of know what they were going to be, but it was really hard. I mean, like it was really hard for a lot of reasons. I think first of all, we had no money. We had negative money, which I think they call debt. We were in debt. And I had no place to live, and I had just broken up with my girlfriend at the time. And a really kind of strange thing that was also happening was it was around the time all of my friends from school graduated and moved to New York. So I'm living in New York on people's couches, and they all have these like great jobs. They have their own apartments. And I think it's very rare in life that you get to see like the exact version of yourself that would have been if you had chosen a different path.
Yeah. Which
I think is a good thing because you just kind of live whatever you're living. And I saw the exact, like all my friends from engineering school, like, like they would be like living in LA, working at SpaceX or Boeing, or like my friends who like were doing finance, doing that, or like venture capital, all this shit, like super professional stuff, which I didn't want to do, but you have this like weird, like temptation to be envious of their, And I was especially envious of their just like stability, because after just years of hitting the road and you know, trying really hard, I just didn't really have that much to show for it, which was a strange thing. And I remember talking to my dad, and he was like, well, there's kind of 3 options, because I also was in a management situation at the time that wasn't right for me. And he's like, you declare bankruptcy, and it kind of relieves you of all this stuff, but it's going to make your life a lot harder in the future. So I was like, okay, that's not really what I want to do. He's like, you go back to school. And I was like, okay, that also doesn't sound great. And the 3rd option was you try and figure it out. And I was like, I will choose that one. If you can give me enough money for a burrito right now, that would be great. And I will see how it goes. And I got the burrito, and I literally spent, I think, about a month straight just every day walking around New York City, just trying to like, I mean, this sounds like so cliche and corny, but literally just being like, what do I want to do? Like, I feel like I'm a capable person. I feel like I can figure this out if I want to. Like, is this what I really, really want to do? Because if it is, I will go head first in and give it my all. And if it's not, then now's the right time, you know, to call it. And I decided, like, this is what I love to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I require on a fulfillment level. Which is kind of what I always like say to people when they're like, should I do music? And I was like, it's not really like a love thing. Like, you can love music and do something else with your life and still love music and play it and stuff. You don't need to be a musician. Like, it's more of like a fulfillment thing. Like, do you require music as a profession for the fulfillment that you need as a person? And I decided that I did. And so I was lucky enough to still be published by Sony ATV at the time. And they had these like little studios in New York, and I just started going there every 7 days a week. I would do 2 sessions a day. I'd be there at 10 a.m. until 2 or 3 in the morning every single day. Just writing, producing for other people. Because I was like, I got to get better. I just got to get better. Like, if this is really what I want to do, I need to treat it like a job. And so that's what I did. I treated it like a job. I was there for, 16, 17 hours a day, just working as hard as I could.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what that really meant yet. But I was like, I don't really care. I want to be like, rather than default hanging out, I want to be default working. And that was kind of my motto.
Yeah, nice. And that search for fulfillment seems to be like a real key theme throughout your career, because when you think about moving to California, moving to Los Angeles to pursue songwriting, and then getting about 6 months into that, and even though you got some credits, you were like, this isn't fulfilling me. I want to do my own stuff.
Yeah.
What was that revelation like, that realization that...
Yeah. Well, I think the artist stuff was always the goal, but I always kind of thought like, I will write and produce for other people until I'm financially comfortable enough to do my own thing and not be worried about paying rent or eating food. And I kind of realized like, there is no guarantee that people take my songs, use my production, or hire me for anything. I might never have more money than I have right now in this moment. Like, what am I waiting for? Like, I'm not doing music to do this. I'm doing it because I love it. So why don't I just do, like, there's other ways to have a really like much more safe career. You know, like, I wouldn't choose music if I didn't like it, because there's ways to make way more money, way easier, you know? And so I just was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? If it's for me, I just got to start making my own music right now, because that's what I love to do. So I did. I called, yeah. And luckily, the people around me in my career were extremely supportive of it at the time.
Right.
Which I'm really grateful for, because that would have made it a lot harder if they weren't.
Yeah. You're very honest with yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to be.
Right. But in terms of acknowledging that and not going, I'll push that to a side and just keep making the money with the songwriting, you kind of follow your gut, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think about this kind of a lot, actually, because I think it's the only thing you know for sure, at least you would hope so, is like how you feel about something. And I think about that in terms of judging songs as well. Like, I could never claim to like know which songs people are going to like. It's not ultimately up to me. The only thing I can know for sure is which songs I like the best. And that's kind of the only like light that I can follow. Right.
So when you think about the business that you were getting into, that songwriting business and the production business, so competitive, and particularly in a city like Los Angeles, I imagine. And there's always a temptation to compare yourself to other people, compare yourself to other people's success. How did you navigate that? Were you guilty of that? Was that something you had to overcome?
Yeah, I think I'm still guilty of that. And it's hard not to be. Like, ambition, I guess, is kind of just a double-edged sword. You know, like, you'd like to, be under the mantra and the mindset that you're only competing with yourself, but the reality is you're not. There's only so many spots on a chart or a playlist or something else. But I think I've come to a place now where like it is healthier than it was before, where I can simultaneously be happy for someone and want to beat them, you know. Not to like make music like a sport or a competition, because I don't know if it necessarily should be that, but you know, you also want to be successful and have songs that connect with people. I think I've kind of always thought of that stuff as like the byproduct of the stuff that I love. Like I love making music, I love connecting with people. If I do both of those things very well, the music will perform commercially. You know, like that's just like what will happen, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not ever the goal, but it ends up being the intended result.
Right. And is that ability to be happy for other people but still want to beat them, is that something that's come with age, or have there been techniques that you've had to
I think it's just come with age and just experience and stuff. And
yeah.
I think another part of it too, I think is like, and this has kind of been a theme throughout my life, but also especially my career, is like proving to myself that I can do it, you know? Like success to me, the biggest thing I've taken away from it is like more just like I've let myself like relax a little bit in a nice way of just like, okay, like you gotta chill out, like you can do it, like you're good enough, like there's no more imposter syndrome, like this is, you've done it enough times, you know, where like, and not to say that I'm anywhere near as accomplished as other people or as I'd like to be, but I believe myself more when I say certain things now, which is great. And it's led me to be able to like, collaborating with Dan is a good example, because I don't think that's something that I could have done a couple of years ago, because I don't think I like had enough trust and belief in myself to be comfortable in the studio with someone like him.
Right.
And I'm really grateful that I got to a place where I was, because I've learned so much from Dan, like so much. Like I cannot even begin to tell you how much.
Right.
And so, yeah, I feel like I'm just consistently iterating on like who I am and what I want to accomplish.
Sure. How do you pronounce Dan's surname? I always see it. I'm never quite
Dan
sure.
Nigro.
Dan Nigro.
Yeah,
right.
it's a tough one for sure.
Got you. So when you released Dirty Air Force Ones, what's that feel like? Do you remember the moment that it was, I presume it wasn't you uploading it to the streaming services, but do you remember the moment it went up?
Yeah.
Given everything you've just told me about wanting to be an artist, and
Yeah.
here's your first taste.
It was just so much, I think pride, I think is the best word. I am so proud of that song, because that song for me kind of signified what I wanted to accomplish as an artist. Was like, I don't think you can strive to write the best song ever, but I think you can strive to write the best, in my case, Alexander 23 song ever. And in that moment, I felt like I'd made something that no one else could have made. And whether or not that meant it was better or worse didn't matter to me, because it felt so unbelievably in line with me as a person, both emotionally and as a producer and as a songwriter. And I was just like, this is exactly how I want to present myself to the world for the first time.
What did that feel like?
Really good. Honestly, really good. Like, it was just like, I don't know, for me, like the best feeling is like, and I felt this way with Aftershock too, is like, I can put this out and I can be proud of it no matter how it does. And I want it to do well, hope it does well. I hope people like it. Regardless, I'm extremely like proud of what this is, and I think I'll look back in a few years and still feel this way. And I felt that way with Dirty Air Force Ones. And honestly, like I'm grateful for that song too, because it's been such like a guiding light of like, I feel like it's so tempting to get caught up in chasing sonics and chasing a sound and chasing this and that. And it kind of taught me to more so chase like that feeling of like feeling like that, the way I did when I wrote it and produced it and put it out. Right.
And then with I Don't Know You Yet, which came out a little bit after that, but then goes on to be such a huge success. How did that change your career?
Man, in so many ways. I'm so grateful for that song. Like, I do not relate to people who don't like their biggest song at all. Like, I kind of get it, but I'm also like, this song has introduced me to so many unbelievable people around the world. Like, I will always be grateful for that song. It also really helped me like in the moment. Like I wrote that song after I was in my studio for 2 weeks by myself trying to write the next single. And I was trying everything, so much like up-tempo stuff, just like how do I crack it? Like trying to reverse engineer stuff, which I think is like death trap of all music making, is trying to reverse engineer anything.
So you're looking at what's successful and going, right, how do I?
Or just like what I perceived as successful, you know, and just like, how do I kind of put my spin on that? It wasn't like, how do I copy that? It was like, oh, how do I do like my version of that?
Sure.
Which is just like, first of all, not going to work, at least in my experience. Second of all, it kind of goes back to like the more existential question I always ask myself of like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to like just try and copy a sound and be successful? Like, is that what I want? You know? And to go down that road, one more layer, it's like, say that works, then you have to be the guy that does that.
Right.
Is that good? You
Yeah.
know? So like after 2 weeks of just like, you know, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy or whatever.
Okay.
And we were just talking about comparison, like of just like intensely like trying to like compare myself both career wise and like sonically to other things and other people. I finally was just like almost like had a breakdown. I was in my studio by myself and I was like, okay, let me just get this slow song out of the way so I can get back to the big songs, and I'll write the big one. And that slow song ended up being I Don't Know Yet.
Yeah.
And I remember being like halfway into writing it and being like, oh, I might have found something here. And then it's like you wish you could just put yourself on autopilot, because then from there you're just like, okay, how do I not mess this up? Like I have something.
Right.
How do I not mess it up? And luckily, I mean, I guess hopefully didn't mess it up too bad.
Absolutely. So what you were just talking about then in terms of songwriting and you're not trying to copy other people, but I suppose you're always conscious of what's popular. When you're writing with other people, so when you're writing with Olivia Rodrigo, for example, and obviously Good For You becomes such a mammoth hit, are you approaching that in a different headspace to when you're writing for yourself?
I'd say a little bit of different. I actually don't really keep up too much with what's popular. I mean, obviously I'm in the zeitgeist, so I'm hearing stuff,
Sure.
But I don't know. I mean, working with someone like Olivia makes it easy because they're so good. You know, it's just like, it's truly an honor to work with. You know, I've gotten to a point in my career where I feel like I get to work with some of my heroes, you know, and it makes it a lot easier. I think for me, the way I like to describe it is like my music, I'm the pilot, like other people's music, I'm the co-pilot, and they're steering the ship and I'm just helping where I can, you know, and whatever that means. And like, it's kind of a balance because you want to make the song as good as you can for them and it's more of like a service industry in a way. But at the same time, like if they're working with you, it's for a reason. They want like your kind of style and your taste imprinted on it. So I think it's always kind of a constant balance of like, this is your song, but you're also here because you like what I do. But at the end of the day, you're the pilot, I'm the co-pilot, you have final say. And I think that for me as someone whose identity is so unbelievably wrapped up in my own music and I'm so hard on myself, it's really, really nice for me to kind of like relinquish that control and allow them to have the responsibility of like, I mean, whenever I'm like with someone and I'm working on their music and they're indecisive and they're like, well, what would you do? What would you do? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't have to go to Sydney, Australia and sing this song for people. You know, you have to do that. Yeah. So you have to love it. Like, even if it makes it worse, like you have to love it because I'm an artist too and I know what that feeling is like. And you want to feel like you're one with the song at the end of the day.
Right. And you have to have a confidence in your own abilities by that point as well, right? You've got to have the confidence to be able to say to someone, I think I'm a co-pilot, but I think this is better.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's like kind of like, going back to the kind of motif of proving stuff to myself, like I Don't Know Yet was instrumental in like me proving to myself, I think to a fault, that like I have, you know, my taste is valid and my opinions are valid and my skill set is valid. And not in like a braggadocious way, but I wrote and produced and mixed that myself. With mixing, I had a little help from my friend Yanni, who's an amazing mixer. Shout out Yanni. But I was finally like, okay, I don't need to do this anymore. Right. Like, I don't need to. And it's funny because now I feel like I have this urge to kind of start retreating again and making stuff just by myself. But it's less because I feel like I have to and because I have something to prove, and more just stylistically, like I feel like I'm approaching another turning point where I want to like reevaluate what I sound like. And I think the best way to do that, at least for me, is to do it by myself.
Right. And do accolades like Grammy nominations, do they give you the ability to be able to do that?
Yeah, more in an external sense. Like it's obviously like cool. It's really cool. And I'm grateful to Dan and Olivia, you know, because without them, obviously that doesn't happen. And Dan's the best producer in the world. Olivia's the best artist in the world. So, you know, it's easy to look good with them, you know. It doesn't take much, you know. I could have just gotten them lunch, you know. But yeah, I think it just helps, you know. It's like, it's one of those like vanity kind of things for the most part, you know. It's like if you look up Alexander 23, you know, the first thing that comes up now is like Grammy nominated, which is awesome. Like I'll take it. We made the song. It's an awesome song. I'm proud of it, you know. I bet
your engineering friends now look at that and go, oh,
yeah,
I wish I had that.
That's funny. Yeah. No, they're doing fine. They're building like literal rocket ships going to Mars and shit. So they're doing okay. Yeah.
Very last thing, Alexander. So Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people you give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Oh man, so many. I mean, I'd say first of all, my parents, they're extremely supportive in so many ways, but I think the biggest way was just like allowing me to have big dreams and not squashing those and validating them and being realistic, but also like letting me know that like it was possible, which I think was really important for me. More on a more specific note, on like the record side, I made this record with some of my best friends and some of the people who I musically look up to so much. Dan Nigro especially, you know, working on half the record with him was such a privilege, and I learned so much. And he became one of my best friends along the way. And then Olivia, Jeremy Zucker, Charlie Puth, Amy Allen, one of my favorite songwriters ever to exist. Got to work with her on a bunch of the songs. Ryan Linville, works with Dan a lot. Amazing at every instrument. Amazing guy to have in the studio. And then my friend Yanni, who mixed the record, is brilliant. And a couple other mixers worked on it as well. Mitch McCarthy.
Takes a village, right?
Yeah, it does. It really does, though. Even for me, and like I make most of my stuff alone. So like, yeah, I think I love giving credit where credit's due. I think it's really important. And even more so, it's just interesting, you know, as an artist and producer and songwriter, it's always cool to see who worked on what.
Yeah, nice. Alexander, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's rare that I get to like really go this deep on so many things. So I really appreciate the thoughtful questions.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Alexander for his time, and thank you for listening. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.